Alright, I am yellow for some reason. I actually have no clue what's going on, ladies and gentlemen, but it is your boy Tambutu back with a brand new video. Today, guys, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about some information. Actually, we're going to do a little bit of a discussion video about graphics in Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield versus Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, and Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon. I want to do a comparison because a lot of people have like a lot of different opinions about the graphics and what they think about them, what's better, what's worse. Are the graphics in this game better than this game? Is, you know, Sword and Shield really bad graphics versus what we've already had, etc., etc. I want to do a discussion today and actually look at this from a objective lens, okay? Because I initially, when I talked about graphics in, you know, in Sword and Shield, I was very negative towards like the idea that, you know, oh, you know, there's nothing wrong with them, right? I was very much on that side of things, but I want to be a little bit more objective today and talk about this in a bit of a, you know, more mature way and kind of like go through this properly and talk about all the aspects of this. So we have a lot of comparison images here, as well as a piece of art here that was made by Kimba, 096 on Twitter. So shout out to Kimba for making this. It's a bit of an art style comparison type thing for you know, for us to see and check out and see kind of what, you know, the deal is. So here's what this is, guys. So I'm going to move my camera, or just rather turn off my camera for a second here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So here is what, you know, Kimba made. It's really interesting. It's an in-game art style kind of comparison, and you know, you've got over here, you've got Ultra Sun and Moon, Minccino, and then you got like Let's Go Peach, Let's Go Eevee style Minccino, and then of course Sword and Shield one. So yeah, it's a little bit of a comparison image. You know what I mean? Basically, that's what it's meant to be. That's what it's basically meant to be. Pretty straightforward. You get the general gist of it, and you know, that's what it is. But let's actually talk about the difference between these, because there is a noticeable difference that you will notice between all of them. Of course, these are, you know, the one for Ultra Sun and Moon over here looks far better than the actual one you see in the games, because the one in the games is a little bit more, you know, blurry, and you'll notice what I'm talking about once we get into the actual, you know, other images here, because we have a few of these to go through, and you'll notice as we go through these what the, you know, difference is. But one of the things I've heard, for example, that's been complained about is people saying that there is no difference between Sword and Shield and Sun and Moon, and that the Sun and Moon graphics are the same as the ones we have in Sword and Shield. Now, in one way, you are correct about that. Now, don't run wild. Let me explain what I'm talking about here. The reason I'm saying you're in one way correct about this is because in one sense, we are getting the same style. And what I mean by style, I mean like we're getting the same kind of like character-looking models. The models look very similar to each other. The general like aesthetic of the world feels very similar. So that is very true. Now, of course, a lot of people had issues with Sun and Moon. I have issues with Sun and Moon. I have a lot of issues with the game design in Sun and Moon specifically, not the actual graphics. I even said back then, and if you go back to some of my oldest videos, I remember saying in those videos that like, I would have been happy if, like, Let's Go Peach or Let's Go Eevee just had the graphics of Sun and Moon, because those graphics were fine to me. The only issue with Sun and Moon graphics was that they were left behind a lot. Like, you know what I mean? They were on the 3DS and trying to have to deal with the 3DS's, like, lack of power to really survive. Now, of course, there are other games out there that kind of give you a little bit of a better style of graphics, if I'm going to be honest, than we're getting in Sword and Shield. You got stuff like Xenoverse, you know what I mean? Or sorry, not Xenoverse, Xenoblade. I think Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which I've been playing on the, let's see, just gotta get some images. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on the Switch, which I've been playing, actually. That has, I mean, graphics that are far beyond anything I've ever seen, like, you know, for a Pokemon game. And that world is huge. That game's world is gigantic. But then again, the graphics aren't perfect there either. There's a little bit of an issue here and there, but the textures look better. The textures are far more, like, you're realistic and stuff. But then comes in the idea of, like, artistic, you know, like, differences and that sort of stuff. Like, you know, maybe, you know, Pokemon doesn't fit in that more realistic style. And maybe it's better to have Pokemon in this more cartoony-esque style and whatnot. There's a lot of conversations that get brought up. But if I was to show you, like, an image right here of, like, Xenoblade Chronicles, this is a general idea of, like, general gist of how it looks like. Now, this is a bit of a poor image, but, like, you can see that there's far more detail in the textures, in the trees over there in the background. You got far more, like, details in the character, like, you know, just kind of, like, armor and, like, it's kind of got this different style to it, right? It's still got this anime-esque style to it, but it's still different. And then you, of course, have something like a Yokai Watch, Yokai Watch 4, which looks totally different and has this kind of, like, very unique and very clean style to it as well, which I will see if I can get an image for you guys here. But that, you know, that game also kind of then does remind me of, you know, right there. This kind of reminds me of the style we're getting for Sword and Shield. You know, it looks good. It doesn't look bad, and that's kind of the most important thing. It shouldn't look horrible. I mean, here's a better image. This is an image that I've shown before, and I'll see if I can get you the proper one here, because it's a little bit hard to get my hands on it exactly, because a lot of these are like far, you know, the quality kind of gets lowered over time and all that, but let's see if we can get you a decent image here. So here's, for example, one image showing kind of what I'm thinking about. And this one's like a little bit blurry, so I do apologize about that. But you can see kind of the blurriness, you know, if you disregard the blurriness, you can see the kind of the shadows look amazing, by the way. The shadows here look amazing from the trees and whatnot. It looks very clean, you know what I mean? The game looks very clean. The art style is very anime-esque and very, you know, nice. And it looks good. And all that. But then again, you know, when we're talking graphics, we should also include the fact of FPS, right? Frames per second. How will the game will run in terms of frames per second? I mean, based on some of the footage we've seen from the trailer for Sword and Shield, there are a few issues that you notice in the trailer instantly. But yeah, back to the actual image here, though, that I want to show you. So here we'll see there's a major difference between the Sword and Shield games versus the, you know, Let's Go games and then the Ultra Sun and Moon games. One, there is no outline used, like no major thick outline like we had in Ultra Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield. Sorry, or in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon. There is none of that in Pokemon Sword and Shield. And that didn't really exist for Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee either. But the difference, though, is, and I will say this, and this is my personal opinion, but I think that Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee has a more plasticky look. Like, the models look more plasticky, and they use more of the Pokemon Go style of models, rather than using, you know, kind of like, you know, different textures and more unique textures, whereas the Sword and Shield textures remind me more of anime textures. And I personally like that, because, I mean, people have been saying, like, I was one of the people who was saying, like, back in the day, and I'm gonna be honest here, I was saying I want, you know, Generation 8, which is what we're getting with Sword and Shield. I want it to be, like, amazing and, you know, awesome and a big leap and whatnot in graphics and, you know, more realistic and all that, maybe, you know, if that's the right way to go. And a lot of people gave me flack back then. A lot of people are saying, like, I don't want Pokemon to be super realistic. I don't want Pokemon to go to this crazy, you know, graphics level and all that. You know, a lot of people are really, really, like, angry with me with that, like, sentiment of mine. But then when I look back now, you know, those people now are on the opposite side of things. Now they're angry that Sword and Shield has graphics that aren't up to that level that I was expecting back then. But then again, I ended up still being happy with Sword and Shield graphics because I think they kind of fit the theme. There's another thing I want to point out here, and please listen to what I have to say right now. If you watch the trailer again, and you look at some of the areas in the trailer, you will notice that things are in the wrong positions. Like, you may not think about it right now, but if you watch a video that was made by, what's called Lootpots, on the Lootpots YouTube channel. Actually, I think this is something you can also find. No, actually, I think it's on the Lootpots YouTube channel. So if you search up Lootpots, you'll be able to find a video that kind of breaks down the trailer and shows areas where in one place, which is basically the grass-type gym, you will notice an interesting thing happens here. And please note what I'm saying right now. They moved objects, and, like, you know, what I mean by that is they moved, like, a wheelbarrow. They moved the Pokemon Center and put a stone in the way. Basically, the trailer is misleading intentionally. Ladies and gentlemen, it is misleading intentionally. Why am I bringing this up? Because this means that they definitely were showing us older gameplay footage. Gameplay footage from a while ago, okay? Old gameplay footage is what we were given, okay? We were given old gameplay footage, which would mean, in logical terms, would mean that these games will look better in one shape or another once we finally get the, you know, final releases, so to say. Now, I'll see if I can actually get my hands on this, because I had this, like, another subject, like, it's related to a Nintendo game, which I talked about, or was brought up as a subject, when we were in the Nintendo Night podcast. I'm trying to find the image right now, if I can, because it was a while ago. Let's put it that way. It was a long time ago that we talked about this, because it's been, like, such a long time now, but I'm trying to find the image that can kind of show you what I'm talking about, you know, in terms of, like, what the graphics could look like. For example, here's a piece of graphics that people have been saying, you know, that I said I wish the games would look like. This is, like, higher, like, these graphics look way better. And these are also coming to the Switch, by the way. These are coming to the Switch. This game is coming to... This is Dragon Quest XI. This is coming to the Switch, by the way. And it uses the same kind of gameplay mechanic. It's a kind of an open world. And this is coming to the Switch. And this looks fantastic. This is, like, an amazing-looking game. Whereas with Pokemon, there's far less detail. There isn't no, you know, the textures aren't as... I mean, look at the mountain textures here. And we'll compare these to actual Sword and Shield mountain textures and stuff like that. Like wall textures and all that. Look at the grass. Look at, like, the actual ground. And, you know, all that. It just looks... Even the texture on, like, the back of the characters, like, you know, cloth here. You'll notice, like, look at the purple, like, the detail there. You know, just the texture looks amazing. Whereas in Sword and Shield, there is not that level of detail. Whereas that game is, of course, just inferior versus this, which is something it's undeniable, okay? But Pokemon, again, you know, it's not all about the graphics, right? It's about, like, the actual game, and if the game is going to be good, will we have good features? Will the story be good? Will the gameplay be fun? Will the gym leaders that we meet, like, and all that sort of stuff be interesting? Will, etc. There's a bunch of stuff that comes into it. But when it comes to graphics, this game is inferior to something like this. This game looks better, and it still retains that anime-esque feeling to it. Like, this looks like something like Dragon Ball, because, you know, you know, you got, what's his name again? Oh, boy. Man behind Dragon Ball. I forget my boy's name every time. Somebody's gonna correct me in the comment section down below, though. But, I mean, literally, he's one of the people who worked on designing these sort of things, and it's got this, like, anime-esque feeling to it, whereas Pokemon has that as well, but kind of in a lesser extent, where the characters feel a little bit more like, it looks too similar in terms of the faces to the ones we saw in Pokemon Sun and Moon, and I think that's what people want to move away from. They want to move away from what we had on the 3DS. They want to make an actual leap, where I don't think we're going to get it this time around. Remember, Sword and Shield have been in development since, like, 2015 or so. Like, actually, no, even before that, 2014, give or take. These started development a long time ago. You gotta understand, Sword and Shield have been in development for a long time, and they clearly have influences. You'll notice it when you see the games. They clearly have influences from Pokemon Sun and Moon, because they were being worked on at the same time. So these games were started development a long time ago, because remember that Game Freak and, you know, companies within, you know, that work closely with Nintendo, they did get the Nintendo Switch prototype ahead of time, so they were already starting, like, development on that, and I think it was too late for them to kind of, like, back away from how the character models look like when they were already so far into development, when the Switch was, like, fully put out there, and they were like, well, shit, I mean, you know, let's just go with what we have. So I think if you're looking for a big graphical leap, you should definitely wait until Generation 9 and Generation 10, because I think that's when we'll see a greater leap than we see right now. I think the leap we saw right now, the jump we saw now, was more reminiscent to me as a jump from Game Boy to DS, okay? I mean, if you look at Game Boy DS jump, right? Game Boy had this kind of really flat 2D design, whereas DS, you know, with, you know, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Diamond and Pearl and Platinum, right? Those had 2D, but it was thicker, and it had more, like, it had more 3D elements to it, right? If you, like, look at, like, those games, there was a lot of 3D modeling in that. Like, those games were made, you know, in a large part with also 3D modeling involved in it. It wasn't just, like, a flat world. It wasn't. It was 2.5D, so to say. And that's the kind of leap we've had right now. That's a jump we've had right now. Whereas we kind of went from, rather than jumping from hyper-real, you know, from okay, shitty kind of looking graphics on the 3DS to hyper-realistic graphics, which is not the leap that I was expecting, to be honest. I mean, that's, you know, when I saw Let's Go Peach and Squeebee, I was like, well, you know, I guess we didn't get it, you know what I mean? And since then, that's where I kind of lost faith in the ability of that happening. Now, I want to do a little bit of, like, a check-in here of, like, the actual comparisons between, like, you know, Sun and Moon, etc., and how that looks like in comparison to, you know, Sword and Shield. And here you can see an instant, like, difference here. There's far more detail in the background. Now, the ground has always had an issue with Pokemon, whereas the ground here doesn't look too different, if I'm going to be honest. If anything, I think the ground in Sun and Moon looks kind of better, almost. But I think that's because, you know, it's kind of darker and all that. But, you know, like, the ground you see here just looks very similar. As for the Pokemon, though, I think you'll instantly notice the one right below me is better because it is on a higher resolution, right? It's in a higher resolution, but also there is no outline. There's a lack of that outline, but at the same time, instead of looking at, you know, the Pokemon looking plasticky like they do in Let's Go Pikachu, sorry, in Let's Go Pikachu and Squeebee. Almost thought I said wrong there. Instead of looking plasticky like in Let's Go Pikachu and Squeebee, they actually look more anime-esque. Like, when I looked at the image of Pikachu, I generally thought, like, this kind of reminds me of, like, as if I'm looking at the anime, almost. You know, and the background looks far more detailed, but still a little bit lacking in textures and all that. Right here, you see a big difference in the world. I mean, honestly, look at the grass, like the normal, just random grass on the ground right below me. You know what I mean? And the water, look at the water here. This looks far more realistic. I mean, genuinely, look at the water, ladies and gentlemen, on Sword and Shield versus the water over here. I mean, honestly, look at that. It is so different. Then again, that water isn't anything over there, isn't anything special in reality, you know, for just general games, because games, I mean, I think even I can make water like that in, like, Unity, which isn't the hardest thing in the world. But then again, it looks good, though. There's nice reflections. The water looks genuinely realistic and good. Whereas, look at this. I mean, look at this. You know what I mean? And there is another thing where Let's Go comes into hand. Let's Go had water like this. Let's Go had water more reminiscent to this rather than this, okay? And that's, again, the thing that I want to bring up, is that people keep making this assumption that Let's Go is either better than Sword and Shield, or that Sword and Shield looks totally trash and too much like Sun and Moon, and Let's Go is better and all this sort of shit. But I want to make the point that I think we're judging it too early. I think there's a lot of stuff we still haven't seen. There's a lot of upgrades that are going to be made. I'm 100% certain of that, by the way. And I think if I can bring up the Nintendo Night podcast here, I can kind of show you what I'm talking about. So if we just go to Nintendo Night, let's see here, and we just find the Nintendo Night podcast here. Just gonna, make sure to lower the volume, because otherwise it's gonna be just, us being really loud in the podcast. But I'll see if I can find the exact moment where we see that kind of like, kind of comparison image, because honestly, that comparison image, right here it is. So here's what I want to show you guys. So this is from a Mario game, right? Now, notice this, okay? Please notice this image right, like, next to me here. Okay, so I paused this. This was a stream of ours that we were doing. So shout out to the stream, by the way, Nintendo Night. Check it out on YouTube. It's on Arrow's channel. But over here, now this is from a Nintendo-made game, a Mario game. Now, notice the difference here. The top image was from the original trailer of that game, the trailer that announced the game and all that sort of shit. And then this down here is the actual game. Notice the difference and the detail that's been added to this one below here. Look at the more increased shadows, the different shades and all that sort of shit. You know what I mean? Honestly, look at that. Because it's far different. It has been far more improved. It looks far more detailed. I mean, look at the face, look at the eyes, look at everything in there. Look at the shading on the hand. I mean, just look at the shading. Up there, it's a simple single shade. Down here, the shading is like, dropping over all the parts of the hand. You know what I mean? The hair, look at the detail in the hair below there. Whereas the one up there is just pure yellow. The one down here is like, it's yellow, but then it's got shades around it, like shades just dropping around all over the place. And also the, the dress. Far more shades of, pink over there, whereas up there, again, lacking. The point I'm trying... Also, look at the carpet. Look at the carpet. Seriously, the carpet down below looks far better. The ground, everything. This is the point I'm trying to make, is that, just because right now we've seen one trailer, that trailer isn't enough. Also, shout out to Zio the Pigeon. But, like, just because we've seen one trailer, that doesn't mean that, that's indicative of these graphics being horrible. So I want to do a graphics comparison to show you all these images. So it's already a long video, but let's go through all these images that I have planned to show you here. But by the way, shout out to Mr. Stock for sending this my way. Stock, dude, you're a freaking legend, man. Thank you so much. I wouldn't be able to do this video without people like him. As well as also, let me see, somebody else sent me these images. Also, Sparkinator as well. Thank you so much for sending these images my way, buddy. So I want to show you these and kind of give you a bit of an idea. So again, down here, again, water. You can see the water over there. It's far more like, like what we were used to before. This down here is far better. Again, not in the biggest of leaps. Right here, you can see the grass, far more detailed grass down here. The grass over there, I mean, just look at it. It's a huge jump. It's a huge leap. I'll put myself in the middle here so I don't block it fully. Right here, exiting your house. You can see over here, like, you've got the grass kind of patches down below you. Like, right over here, you got, like, patches down here, on the Sword and Shield side. They look far more detailed. Whereas on this side, you got a little bit of, like, it's a basic texture over the ground. And then a little bit of, like, flowers on the side over there, like white flowers on that side. And right below me here is, like, a little bit of extra patch of grass. Overall, and this was also, by the way, this was also recorded over here. This was recorded in like, a higher resolution. And I think without lines... I think this is no lines on a PC, by the way. This is recorded on a PC. So this is like at better graphics. This isn't how it even looks like in the game. In the game, it looks worse on the 3DS. This looks, this is on a PC. So do keep that in mind. Here we have also a comparison between like running up to monuments and all that. Down here again you see, and this is the image I was talking about earlier, guys. This image in the trailer gets switched off. You see that barrel over there, like that wheel barrel or whatever, like wheel, you get the thing I'm talking about. That thing over there actually isn't in that same position in a different shot in the trailer. And right below me here, this rock isn't here in another shot. In a different shot, there's a Pokemon Center right here, okay? So what they've been doing is, they've been clearly adding different, pieces of footage with, like, changed things in, the trailers, which means that they are misleading in the trailer, hence why the trailer says, not final gameplay footage, because they're going to give us something better at the end, in terms of graphics, positioning, all that sort of stuff. They're hiding a bunch of stuff, ladies and gentlemen. They are hiding stuff, and they're doing it because it's gonna, like, they do this sort of stuff a lot within movies as well. It's a way to not spoil the final end product. If you look at, like, for example, Marvel's Endgame, like Marvel Avengers Endgame, right? So in Avengers Endgame, they've made, like, currently they already have, like, several different endings that have been made as a way to not leak the actual final ending of the movie. They make several fake ones, as well as just including minuscule amount of, like, stuff from the actual movie in the trailers now. I mean, look at the Endgame trailer. You may not notice this, but they do a lot of that sort of, like, they put in stuff there that actually isn't going to be in the final product, and things that will be better in the final product. Infinity War. There is a shot in the Infinity War trailer where you see Captain America, the Hulk, and a bunch of other characters running straight forward towards, like, you know, I guess Thanos. That is never in the movie. That never happens ever in the movie. But they literally spent money, resources, money, and all that stuff making that fake footage because they know that somebody's gonna try to leak this shit in one way or another. So why not just try to, like, you know, just mislead people, I guess, and then give them the end product without spoiling it for them. And that's the same thing I think is going to happen here. We're not seeing the final endgame product. I think we're seeing early footage of what they had to show us, and they don't want to spoil the actual end thing. So yeah, even here, you can notice the different details. I mean, the grass here just looks better. The detail in the actual, like, wheel battle over here looks fantastic. It's just more vibrant. It's just more vibrancy in this than there is over there in you know, Sun and Moon. Here, for example, you can see the difference in the mountains, and this was what I mentioned earlier, that, you know, if you compare the mountains in this one over here, they are, you know, inferior to the ones that you see in, like, Dragon Quest XI, whereas over here, you know, I mean, they're far superior than the ones in Sun and Moon. So you got that. Here you can see how the Pokeballs look like. I mean, they're very similar still, you know, there's really not much of a difference in the Pokeballs, which, you know, is a little bit disappointing, but again, they're just round little circular balls. There's really not much else they can do to them. You know, there are, like, few, like, really hyper-realistic 3D renders, but I don't think making them hyper-realistic 3D renders would have made it really fit with the rest of the game, so I don't know. Again, the detail in the background, slightly better in this shot right here. Here we got the capturing image, you know, on the left side here, sorry, on the left side over here, sorry, because this is, like, reversed for me, but on the left side for you guys over here, this is from Sun and Moon, this over here is from Sword and Shield. Very similar, not too much difference in that. Here we got a kind of a comparison between how it looks like when you encounter a, you know, an enemy, so to say. Of course, you can see the ground details here are far more detailed on this side. The bush looks far more detailed, and if you look at the rock over there, it's like, you know, it's lacking over here. You know what I mean? It's close, but it isn't exactly the same. And again, you gotta remember, this was recorded on a PC, by the way. You know, the other footage here from Sun and Moon. Here also you can see a big difference in the, you know, kind of like character models and how they're different. Like over here you got like this kind of like, you know, outline that makes it look very, very like poor, you know, kind of like almost like it's a sprite rather than the 3D model. Whereas over here you actually see, this is actual, you know, you see this as a 3D model and it's far more detailed. I mean, it isn't perfect, again, it isn't perfect, but you know, you can see the shading in here is far better and just, you know, just just way better, honestly. I mean, look at this one. The shading here looks like it's pixelated, right? Over here it actually looks like proper shading. But yeah, over here as well, you got the room of the character. This is between, this is Let's Go now. So Let's Go is a little bit different, right? Let's Go has this more of a plasticky Play-Doh feeling to it. And you may not understand what I mean. You might be like, Ruffled, I think you're overdoing it. I think you're overreacting. But it does have a more of a Play-Doh feeling to it. Like it's made out of like dough or something, or like plastic. Whereas the one on this side, you know, it's far more like, you know, kind of like raw. It's kind of more of a raw feeling to it, a more vibrant feeling when you're in the world, whereas Let's Go is got more this plastic feeling to it. But right here, I think you can kind of see that they are very similar. There's a very similar kind of, you know, matchup here, but the graphics are different, and that's indicative of the fact that Let's Go has had far more time to, you know, engulf itself in the current, like, you know, status quo of things. And what I mean by that is, remember, Let's Go was made in 2 years by a team of 100 people. I mean, I'm not sure why I'm saying 10, but my point is, it was made by 100 people, and it was made in 2 years, okay? In 2 years, which means that it was made in, if it was released in 2018, it was started development in 2016. Remember, during 2016, Sword and Shield, which is on this side, I keep pointing the wrong way, Sword and Shield was already in development, okay, at that time. Sword and Shield was already in development at that time. Keep that in mind. Sword and Shield was already being developed. There's no way that they can be like, ah, shit, I mean, we kind of discovered something good over here. Do we have time to plug that in there, like, fast enough? I don't know. Again, also do remember this could be older footage. We could see an upgrade in this far, you know, they're looking far better once we get further in there. And there's another issue with Pokemon is that I think the characters are the biggest issue. The character faces are so bland. And I guess it's because they want you to be able to put yourself onto the character so you can kind of imagine yourself being the character. So to say, I guess that's what the end goal really is. So I apologize if the music's been too loud. I think that's what the end goal is meant to be here, you know, with this whole thing, but I don't know. But here you can see there is, you know, Let's Go in this game. They're very close, you know, in graphics, but still very different. Whereas this one's over there got a bit of a Play-Doh feeling, but also does look somewhat better in you know, at least in some aspects in interior design. But there are other areas, you know, where it doesn't look as good. For example, here I definitely prefer Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield I prefer. Why? Because this one over here looks far more plasticky and more like Pokemon Go. And that's because they actually did use like Pokemon Go assets for this one. Whereas this one over here uses the assets they made for X and Y with upgraded, you know, textures. So I think personally I prefer the Sword and Shield one. I know some of you guys will prefer this one. Of course, I get that. That's fully fine to, you know, to say. But then again, there's also like less shading in the background here. It's far more, again, Play-Doh-y, kind of like plastic, and I think that's my issue, is that it's plasticky. Here, you'll notice there's a bit more detail. There's far more detail and vibrance in the mountains, whereas over here, like in the rocks, they're very much the same kind of like style to it. It's very much like one note, whereas here, it's like, it isn't the same thing. If you look at the sides of the mountains here, like on this side, if you look here and then on the other side, you know, a bit further off on the, you know, the other side over there, you'll notice that there's a difference between them. It isn't like it's a repeating tile, whereas over here, you know, look at the, like, you know, for example, let's just move this to the side here. Look at the end of the screen over here. Look right here. Look at this, okay? This is all just repeating textures. That's what this looks like. It's just repeating textures. It isn't unique or different. Sure, it may look good, but it isn't really unique or special in any way. It's just a repeating texture, so to say, which, you know, is just instantly, for me, lowers the, you know, the graphical, you know, improvements that you see in, you know, quote unquote on this one versus this one. I think Sword and Shield does better here in the mountains, or how the rocks look like. Here as well, you'll notice far more, like, you know, what's the word you would go for? I think you notice far more shading and far more of, like, a vibrant feeling. I mean, look at that Pokeball. Again, plasticky, very plasticky. This one, look at the shading on that. It's far better shaded. Even the background looks better. Whereas over here, the background has got detail to it, but it's more like, you know, kind of like, it's kind of hard to describe it. It's kind of, I can't find a word for it. And then, of course, here you can see there's a bit of a difference. Here is where I think Let's Go is superior. And I think the reason for that, again, is because this was development earlier. So I think they haven't had time to, like, you know, change the style of some of these things. But then, you know, because, like, right here, look at the flora. You know, the flora and the vibrancy in the forest and all that. I mean, look at the different, like, flowers here and how, like, they're very clean and really well made. Even the grass here looks very, again, plasticky, but really good. It looks really, really nice. Whereas the grass over here looks kind of inferior, but whereas the actual world feels more realistic and less plasticky and less cartoony than this one. This one feels more anime, this one feels more cartoon, if that makes any sense. Again, here you can see, you know, this one's got a bit more Play-Doh design to it. This one's got more like a shading, you know, more details, just more like, you know, more vibrant in a way, in a weird way. And here again, we just have, you know, the comparison versus this. So I think it's still, like, you know, this is the sort of graphics I'd love to see for Pokemon. This is like the level I want them to jump to, but who knows if they'll ever reach it. So ladies and gentlemen, that was a long video. I really want to get this done because I've been wanting to talk about this subject for a long time. I did a video kind of comparing this, like, back in when the games were first announced, back in, like, you know, February, or actually no, it was like 1st of March or something that I posted it. But I really want to do a video about this subject because I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time, but I just have not been able to get to it. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you did enjoy the video, then drop a like down below. Thank you so much for watching. My name is RuffledRowlit. Have yourselves a great day, and bye-bye, ladies and gentlemen. Peace!